But another career that I thought about, and I'm like, I don't know who should say it, like influencers.
My question to you and to our audience is more so like, don't you think that because you're willing to see if you have an ego, that you don't really have one?
They're scaredy cats because they know they're wrong.
Ego to me is somebody that...
Well, you said somebody.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hi, welcome back. So we're trying a different setup this week. I was saying we needed to connect a little bit more with you at home, and I wanted to have something in my hands because I think I use my hands too much. Let us know how you think about this setup and if it works okay for you, not having the mic stands, but we're going to give it a try. So comment, like, whatever, if you feel like it's good, bad, or indifferent. Yes.
This week, we want to talk to you guys about you versus your ego, and then us versus our ego.
Yeah. So what we've realized is that I don't know the difference between ego and pride. When we started this topic, some of the points I was trying to make in our notes that we were making was more pride related. So I'm trying to get clear, and Alex is going to help me with that, on where pride or ego starts and pride ends, because there's so many parts of my life that I feel when it comes to work, I'm quote unquote prideful of the quality of work or my coworkers having confidence in me being able to deliver the way that I do, things like that, versus there's a part of that I always thought was my ego, where I didn't allow myself to, and this is maybe where it's a double-edged sword and I get confused, is because in my mind, I would think my ego is the thing that is keeping me from falling below that standard of, say, work or lifestyle or living, where some people is like, oh, I'm prideful that I can deliver that. But for me, it's more like I see my ego stepping in. It's like, I'm better than that. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's, yeah, I think I get a little confused on ego versus pride. But we're talking about ego. So Alex, my version, yeah, I'm trying to figure out like where it ends, where it starts. So when you think about ego, where do you think about?
Ego to me is somebody that...
Well, you said somebody.
Yeah, because I don't think I have one.
She doesn't think she has an ego. Mm-hmm.
No.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
I don't.
See, this is like, I would flat out say, I think I have an ego.
Yeah.
But that by definition, I probably don't as much, or it's in control. Does that make sense? Like, my ego is in check.
Yeah.
But I still think I have one. Slightly.
Can I be egotistical? Sure. But do I think I have an ego? No.
Okay, what is ego for you? I'll let you explain.
Ego
Please.
for me is somebody who has an ego, predominantly dominates every single conversation. They think that they are always right, and they don't know how to make compromises or like give in on anything.
Yes, I know people like that.
So do I. And I think that I can't remember all of the points that I had, but I think that the majority of it is that there is this sense of self that they really just think that they are better than the rest of the world. And I just don't think that I present myself that way. And also my mindset isn't that way. Like, I know that I'm not better. I know I can learn so much from so many people. I think that, like, of course, at times, do I think I'm right? And do I think I always have, like, valid points? And do I argue my points and stand up for myself? Yes, I do that. And if somebody proves me wrong, is my pride hurt? Of course. But can I go ahead and, like, admit that I was wrong? Yes. So that's why I don't think that I have an ego. I think being egotistical is a thing, like, in moments. But I also think that that's something about, like, being kind of like show-offy, right? Like, do you think that being show-offy is like also kind of having an ego? Because it's like a lifestyle as well as action items.
But that's, I think, why I would say everybody has an ego. Because things that you accomplish, okay, maybe you actually don't have an ego, but to other people it comes off that you have an ego because one, they might not know you. So if you accomplish something and you're kind of just telling people about it, they immediately be like, oh, look at Alex showing off. Like, but it's not coming, it's not coming from you in that manner. But if an outside perspective only sees you as that, they're like, oh, she's egotistical, or she has a very big ego because of her accomplishments. But I think that's why I believe everybody has an ego in a way, but it's manageable. Does that make sense? I hope everybody has an ego, but they have it in check.
It's interesting. I think, yeah, I don't think that you're wrong. Yeah. I'm sure everyone does have a sense of ego, but like if you're going to say, like in my mind, it's either all or nothing. I don't think that there's this gray area with the term ego, because I think that there's a lot of other sub terms with that can be used to describe the other things that you're talking about, right?
Yeah. And I would say that's probably pride.
That is pride. They can be prideful. They could be just show-offy, right? Like they can just be stubborn, not knowing when to admit that they are wrong, not listening to other people's points of views. I think ego is the, like, if it's on a scale of 0 to 100, it is the 100. And that person is always at 100. And they don't know that, they can't even recognize when somebody calls it out to them that they are being like that, right? Because their ego is just so big that they only see their good, like what they think is good within themselves.
No, that's fair. I 100% know what you mean. And now that you describe it to me kind of in that context, I would say which actually I want to ask you, because I've found myself in conversations sometimes always, like, I find it to be what people call this, like, thread, they call it a conversation thread, where the quickest way to end a conversation is just to say, like, if you say, like, oh, I enjoy going to Chicago, whatever, and you're like, cool, I've been to Chicago,
yes,
and it's just like, it stops, versus you say, oh, I've been to Chicago, I really like in the winter and the this and the whatever. Like you provide all of these other threads or strings that someone can latch onto.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you feel like I have a little bit of an ego, because I've found myself sometimes, any conversation that I'm in, it's a way, I always thought it was a way for me to relate to that person and have a conversation.
Okay.
But I'm realizing that maybe I'm trying to make the conversation about myself in a way where, I'm trying to get, I don't have a good example right now. But
are you saying that you always relate it back to yourself?
Yes. If you don't feel that, great.
Maybe I don't notice. I don't know.
If you haven't noticed, thumbs up for Erica, because I'm trying to not do it as much because I feel like
I'm more impressed that you could. You have to live quite a life to do that to everybody. You know what I mean? Because not everybody is going to have standard experiences that you could relate it back to, unless it's just not even related. If you're going into a conversation and it's like about one thing, but like you're like relating it back to yourself about something completely different. Like,
it's always related, but I'm like, I always thought it was like an experience thing. Like, I'm giving you my experience, but that's not what you're asking for. You're at this point giving me your experience. And instead of relating it to me, like, oh yeah, I've been like through that, or my sister, my friend, I always relate it to experiences I've had versus, I don't know. And maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Like, I overthink everything in my life.
So when was the last time that you really were thinking about this?
Oh, I feel like it happens at work all the time.
But like work-related items?
So, yes and no. Like, mainly just casual conversations that someone's like, oh, I did this weekend. I was like, oh yeah, I've been there and I've done this, and like, oh, I enjoyed this when I was there, and but and it's kind of like it takes a dive over to like Erica's experiences versus I asked them how their weekend was, and then it turned into like, oh, I've done that before, and like I just kind of roller coaster my way to talking about myself.
Okay, but
Maybe
you think that is having an ego? I mean, I guess it could be perceived as having one.
That was a part of the definition.
And I guess you're not wrong, yeah.
No. If you haven't noticed, then that's good.
I don't think you do it to me. I think I know. I've either been there.
Usually our conversations are just like, we're just like batting back and forth.
No, but I've been there probably. Like, like, I feel like we've experienced quite a bit.
Are you egotistical when you're ego to each other? If we're constantly just bigger egos than each other?
I don't think... I don't know. I feel like if I was to do a self-reflection on myself around you, right?
Okay.
I do think that you ask questions. Mm-hmm. But maybe when there's like a lull in conversation, it is what everyone does naturally is try to relate it back to themselves. Yeah. So I do think that and also people aren't always good at asking questions.
They're not. A lot of people aren't good at doing the threading conversations. They just are very cut and dry. So yeah, I'm a good filler. I am a good filler, that's for sure. Because I can talk to a wall, so it's fine.
But what tends to happen, I feel like, is a question could be asked to somebody, but then it turns into like a 20-question game versus a conversation around like multiple back and forth questions. So maybe in these conversations that you're having with people, potentially they're not asking questions and they're just telling you their experience. And at that point, it's kind of like if you asked a question and they're still just telling you experience and not trying to like have a conversation around it, you're probably going to relate it back to yourself, is my
That's fair.
assumption. But I can't tell.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it is just the fact that I'm very aware of, or I try to be aware of how I speak and who, like, things I speak about. And I can tell when it's just either the conversation's not going in the right direction or it's really short, and I try to, like, buffer it up. And, yeah.
Isn't that not engaging? I guess it depends on if the other person's interested in what you have to say. Yeah. If you know
they pretend to be interested if they are.
You can tell based off of body language, eye contact.
No, yeah, that's true. I could be overthinking this like I do most things, but I'm trying to be better at, and it doesn't make it disingenuous that I'm not because I divert it to myself. In my mind, I'm not being disingenuous to how they're feeling or what they're going through. That's how I connect.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But not everybody wants that. Mm-hmm. They're bringing something up because they need help or they want attention or they just want to have a conversation. And I'm trying to be better about not always giving like advice or my opinion or my experience towards something. I don't want to say before it's asked of, but kind of buffering it a little bit. Like, don't just, but I think it's because I'm a very vulnerable person. Mm-hmm. You can immediately tell if I'm like having a bad day, having a good day, my emotions are on my sleeve and there is no hiding anything.
Yeah.
I don't hide well. Alex is like, you okay? And I'm like, no. She like just knows. So, and people see that probably at work as well. When I'm quieter, when I'm reserved, but I'm trying to be more, give myself to the world. Does that make sense? Like giving my full self to, but maybe that's my superpower. I don't know. Giving my full self to every single person I engage with, and that's, what makes me a good person. I don't know. I'm overthinking it probably like always, so that's fine.
No, I don't think you're overthinking it. I think that you are being aware, which is great. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you talk about ego and when you self-reflect on if you have an ego, it's always going to make it seem like you do if you look up certain definitions. My question to you and to our audience is more so like, don't you think that because you're willing to see if you have an ego, that you don't really have one? Because somebody with an ego probably wouldn't even consider being like, oh, I want to put and define that this is me.
They're scaredy cats because they know they're wrong.
Well, I think it's that, but it's also no one's put them in the position to be aware. Everybody tends to just, because they dominate a conversation so much, they don't say anything, or then they just can't hear it when somebody does say something because they can only hear what they are saying. And it turns into a whole, a bigger conversation around just like personality types, in my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. I think that certain personality types have bigger egos than other personality types. And not that should maybe generalize people in buckets, but being more confident and being like having an ego is not hand in hand. I think that in some ways, though, the characteristic and traits that are defined by both can be parallel.
Yes, I would agree with that. And maybe because we're both Capricorns, we should Google that. Do Capricorns have egos?
I'm sure every sign has an ego.
I know. I know.
But yeah, I think what's interesting to me about egos and about the personalities around egos and like that correlation is more so that any leader kind of has to have a good sense of self, which can be perceived, as you mentioned, as having an ego. But without that, like, how do you expect people to follow you if you don't have this command over what you say and what you do, right? And like all of that command over what you say and what you do leads you to have better experiences in your like work or your personal life, and more people are attracted to those things. Generally, right? I think that when you have this command over your life and your sense of self, like literally all social media, all the people that are influencers have this command over self that people are so attracted to. And when you are a bit, I wouldn't say weak, but like if you have self-doubt and if you are more vulnerable and if you have this personality that's a little bit more timid, people aren't attracted to want to follow it. They're more so attracted to want to take care of it, to nurture it, to maybe see if you're doing okay. And those people would not be considered having an ego in those moments, right? So like, I think it kind of all characteristics and traits of an ego, and hopefully that all makes sense. I'm not really sure if it does.
No, I would call that though just confidence, and I would actually call it this like charisma. So confidence and charisma. Like charisma is something that you honestly have to have this balance between being, I call it this perfect balance of between like knowledgeable about topics and then being able also to be kind of surface level. So you have this charisma where you can walk into any room and at any moments you can have a full conversation with someone who you're just trying to like talk about, sounds silly, but like the weather, surface level conversations. But as soon as you turn a corner and you can talk about someone about business and like you have this confidence and this like charisma and this personality to attract those that like just people's eye and their, if you can attract a mind, I think that's very, very powerful. Like when you can attract someone's mind but it's that balance which I think is charisma, of like confidently showing up in a room and having the mental capacity to jump between both surface level but also deep conversations, is that perfect balance, which most people don't have. And I feel like people in those arenas have charisma in this self-confidence. But sometimes, but I think in that arena, it's very unlikely that it comes off as an ego. Because you know when to dial it up, you know when to dial it down for your audience. And I think that because you're very aware of yourself, you're very aware of your audience, you don't overpower anybody in those instances. And I feel like that's what ego does. Your ego tends to overpower because you crave this validation from whoever is in that room. Like, if I'm talking to someone, most people on the one side, they're probably so much smarter than me. And like, I just know this going out of the gate. They know things I don't know. I think that about everybody. Everybody can teach me something at the end of the day. So I always try to keep what I've realized tonight is my ego in check, where everybody, and I know this, but everybody has something that they can teach me. So I never go into any conversation thinking that I know more than them. So maybe that's just my default of what keeps my ego in check. If I guess if I do have one, I don't know anymore, because I think it's more pride than ego at this point. But if I did, I think that for me is what keeps me in check.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Egos, man.
I was just thinking about, it's more so, is there certain careers that you think hold egotistical people to a higher level of wanting, they want people who have egos? This, I don't know why, this came to my mind, and I feel like it could be a little controversial to try and classify everybody like this, but I'm so curious if you
this is a great exercise.
Yeah, if you could think of maybe a career field that people are majority egotistical.
Well, and maybe this is why I think everybody has ego a little bit as well, but you just keep it in check. At the end of the day, entrepreneurs have to have a little bit of ego when it comes to, you are selling yourself, you are selling your business, you are selling this obscure, you hear about all the stories of someone sold these, well, it's also just a bunch of greedy people who want to make extra money. Like, people who have money, they're greedy and they just want to make more money. So over the past 3 years, recently stories have come out about people pitching these investors and getting millions and millions of dollars for a product that doesn't even exist yet, or it's not proven. And that's probably the guys with money's egos talking I just have money, let's fling it out at anything. But there is a point where you kind of have to step outside of yourself sometimes when you're asking for money, for investments. You have to sometimes believe more. You have to believe in the product, in the future of that product, more than you actually can factually line up. You know, you can't actually get there yet, but you're oh yeah, we can get there. There's a 60-40 rule. It's we get there 60%, the rest of the 40% will figure itself out. Or I would say sales. I don't know.
I was literally thinking sales.
So sales, sales came first in my mind, but entrepreneurship
good.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
But why though?
Because it's what you said. It's people who do sales. So sorry if
we apologize
if anybody watching does do sales, because don't mean to offend, but people who do sales just you're selling nothing at points in time. In my mind, you're selling something that somebody doesn't need. Because a lot of we in the US, at least in California, you don't need it. You maybe are being told that you want it, and that's what marketing is. That's what all these things are, and those are more subtle ways of going about it. But when you have to be in person and selling, you are selling based off of the maybe small chance that person actually wants it. and a much bigger chance, or like a small chance that they need it, bigger chance that they want it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you have to have an ego in that sense, because, like, what? It's like a 90-10 ratio.
Yeah.
And I think it's survival. I think they have to have ego to survive off of that. Like, when the odds are so stacked against you, like, how do you maintain such drive to keep moving forward? It has to be your ego, no? Like,
Or would that be pride?
no, it's not pride. Because pride to me is like what you said. It's like giving up on it. I don't think that they would give up on it. I think
they believe you wouldn't. Pride would come into play when you believe in something enough that you wouldn't give up on it. You're just selling something just to sell it because you want to make money. You're greedy, honestly, at that point.
a little bit.
Yeah. But another career that I thought about, and I'm like, I don't know if I should say it, like influencers. Like those big influencers.
You think that they have, okay, I
think they have ego because all they know is
likes and comments.
And their ego is being stroked by that. Like if the plainest definition is just selfishness and yeah, you're egotistical.
Oh, being self-centered, yeah.
Yeah, you're self-centered all the time. Your presence on a platform is... people are liking it and commenting, you're beautiful, you're this, you're whatever, giving you money, giving you whatever, and ads and brand deals and all these things. And there's these people who have, quote unquote, done nothing of substance in their lives, and they are only on platforms and getting money because they have likes. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is the most... yeah. In my mind, like, it just kind of came to me. I was like, oh my gosh. Egotistical job? Oh my God. Don't come out.
I mean, I guess technically we will have an ego because we want to post on social media as well, no?
But we're not doing it for... we feel like we have knowledge to share, and if anybody can relate to that...
But what if they feel the same way?
As...
those influencers that have more maybe self-centered content, but like, can't you view it like somebody else looking in? It's like what you said, right? Like people like looking in at us could definitely say that we have an ego because we are doing the same things that the social platforms, tend to like really nurture. Like they nurture egotistical people because like at the end of the day, like likes and comments from people around the world or bots tend to give that sense of self or like that self-centeredness.
I guess, see, back to square one. What I said, we all have egos. Ding, ding, ding. Look, I was right from the beginning.
I think there are a lot of ways to look at ego in your life.
Yeah.
Careers just kind of came to me as one of the ways to look at it. Like if you look at it as a whole, do you think that certain career fields have more egotistical people? And I think social media has only made it more evident that there are egotistical people in certain fields. Yeah. We went to a fashion school. Like, isn't fashion and beauty a more egotistical realm of beautifying things, right? Like making things more beautiful than necessarily like...
People would argue that it's just it's a self-expression.
I agree. And I went there.
Yeah, we both did. I'm going to be honest, I'm probably the least fashionable person out of the two people on this couch. Because usually, like, this is probably the most graphically designed shirt I have in my closet. Most of them are all just, like, blank t-shirts.
I literally wear black all the time.
You do. She's very neutral. This is the neutral side of the couch. I'm the colorful one usually on this side of the couch.
Yes,
but
it is true.
No, that's a fair point. And I think that at the end of the day, honestly, if you have a little bit of ego, that is fine. Because there is a part of me that still believes ego can drive you in a positive way, a little bit here and there, to motivate you to keep wanting more. But that's where the pride thing starts slipping in just a little bit. But Just don't let it get to you. Don't ruin other people's or look down upon other people. Don't let it get out of control, is what I'm trying to say. Just don't let it get out of control. Be kind. Be courteous of other people. And I think if you got a little ego, you'll still be fine. People will still be able to want to hang out with you. So
I agree. I agree. And let us know what you think, because honestly, we could have a much different point of view than the rest of you. And I would be more than happy to know what your point of view is, because it isn't a topic I would say that many people have with each other. No. Like, I don't know.
Because they're too scared to have it with each other. What you said, like, people are scared to have this conversation because they're scared that someone's going to tell them they have an ego.
Is it even a conversation that people would even consider? Like, I feel like it's one of those, like, on a prompt card if you're playing a game night or something, and it's all like, tell me your biggest ego traits or something.
There's people, I feel like at my work, I would say, like, they have egos. Oh. And everybody just knows it, but no one says anything.
And it's not like even, like, a topic of conversation amongst other coworkers about their ego, or no? No. Or do they say, oh, okay.
We're just like, oh, look at so-and-so on their high horse again. You know? It's subtle comments, but it's not.
It's not a conversation.
Oh, it's not a conversation.
Okay.
No.
No self-respect.
I think everybody just knows they have a little ego in them, and they're not going to go over here and you can't, it's being a hypocrite. They just can't be a hypocrite because honestly, we've all probably been there at some point.
Yeah, no.
Maybe not to the degree.
No.
But, yeah.
I think that I could view ego as more of a scale versus a black and white on and off switch. However, in my realm of just understanding things and making me probably feel better about myself is to say that it is more black and white, and that I maybe fall within other characteristic traits that might parallel to ego, as mentioned earlier.
That's fair. And we'll take that. We will take that as a conclusion and as a stamp of approval from both of us.
Yes.
So we appreciate you listening in and having this conversation about ego with us today. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe. We are trying to obviously reach as many people as we can because we value what we're bringing to the table, and we hope you do as well. So let us know what you think. Like, subscribe, and yes, we will be on Instagram and YouTube every Saturday.
Have a great day, guys.